In a quiet town just outside Washington, D.C., life moved at a slow and predictable pace. The streets were lined with trees whose leaves turned golden in the fall, and neighbors exchanged polite smiles as they passed each other on their morning walks. It was the kind of place where nothing exciting ever seemed to happen, until one fateful evening when everything changed. John Miller, a 35-year-old mechanic, lived a simple life. He wasn't rich or famous, but he had a steady job fixing cars, at a local garage, a cozy apartment, and dreams of someday opening his own shop. His older sister, Laura Carter, often teased him about being too cautious. "You're always playing it safe," she would say with a laugh. Laura, on the other hand, was anything but cautious. As the director of the FBI, her days were filled with high-stakes decisions and constant pressure. Still, despite their different lives, the siblings remained close. On this particular evening, John returned home from work feeling unusually tired. He hadn't been sleeping well lately, plagued by vague worries about his future. But tonight something felt different. There was an unease in the air that he couldn't quite explain. Little did he know his world was about to be turned upside down. Around midnight, there was a loud knock on John's door. Startled, he opened it to find two police officers standing outside. They introduced themselves as Officers Daniels and Martinez and explained that they needed to ask him some questions. Confused, John invited them inside. The officers wasted no time getting to the point. They told him that he was suspected of stealing classified documents from a nearby military base. John's heart sank. "I don't even know what you're talking about," he stammered. "I haven't been near any military base." The officers didn't seem convinced. One of them pulled out a folder and showed John photos taken from security cameras. In the grainy images, a figure resembling John could be seen entering a restricted area of the base. Even more damning was the fingerprint evidence found on a flash drive containing sensitive information. According to the report, the prints matched John's exactly. "I swear I didn't do this," John pleaded. "Someone must have set me up," but the officers weren't swayed. They placed him under arrest and took him to the station. By morning, news of the arrest spread like wildfire. Reporters camped outside the police station, eager to get a glimpse of the man accused of espionage. Headlines screamed accusations. "Local man steals military secrets," and "brother of FBI director arrested for treason." Laura Carter woke, up to dozens of missed calls and messages. At first, she thought it was another crisis at work. But when she finally checked her phone, she saw the shocking news. Her brother John had been arrested for stealing classified documents. She froze, unable to process what she was reading. How could this happen? John wasn't capable of such a thing, or so she believed. As the day wore on, the media frenzy intensified. Journalists speculated about whether Laura's position as FBI director played a role in the case. Some suggested she might have used her influence to protect her brother, while others wondered if John's arrest was part of a larger conspiracy involving the agency. Laura knew she had to tread carefully. Any misstep could make things worse, for John and for herself. She called her trusted aide, Alex Bennett, and asked him to meet her at headquarters immediately. When Alex arrived, Laura was pacing nervously in her office. "This can't be happening," she muttered. "John wouldn't do something like this. I know my brother." Alex nodded sympathetically, but reminded her of the potential consequences. "If you get involved directly, people will accuse you of bias," he warned. "You need to let the system handle this, not because you don't care, but because interfering could damage your credibility." Laura sighed heavily. She hated the idea of sitting back while her brother faced such serious charges. Yet, deep down, she knew Alex was right. She couldn't afford to appear partial, especially given her position. Still, she refused to abandon John entirely. That afternoon, she visited him at the county jail where he was being held. Seeing John behind bars broke Laura's heart. He looked pale and exhausted, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "I didn't do this, Laura," he said hoarsely. "I went to that building for a job interview, I swear. Someone must have planted those documents on me." Laura listened intently, trying to piece together what might have happened. According to John, A friend had referred him to a company looking for someone with technical skills. The interview seemed legitimate, and he followed all the instructions given to him. Afterward, he left the premises without incident. It wasn't until later that he realized something was off. Laura promised John she would do everything in her power to help him, but privately she worried. The evidence against him appeared strong, and public opinion was already turning against him. If she couldn't find a way to prove his innocence quickly, the situation could spiral out of control. Back at FBI headquarters, Laura quietly assigned Agent Ryan Cole to look into the case. Ryan was known for his sharp instincts and ability to remain discreet. Though she couldn't officially sanction the investigation, Laura trusted him to dig deeper than anyone else would dare. Ryan began reviewing the details of John's arrest. He noticed several oddities almost immediately. For one, the timeline didn't add up. Security footage showed John leaving the building around 3 p.m., yet the flash drive containing the stolen files was accessed online at 8 p.m., hours after he supposedly departed. Furthermore, witnesses reported seeing another man lurking near the restricted area earlier that day. This man bore a striking resemblance to Greg Hoffman, a disgraced contractor with a history of shady dealings. Despite these leads, Ryan encountered obstacles at every turn. Key documents were mysteriously missing, and potential informants clammed up when approached. It was clear that powerful forces were working to keep the truth hidden. Meanwhile, Laura struggled to maintain her composure. Amid growing scrutiny, every decision she made was scrutinized, and critics pounced on any perceived favoritism toward her brother. By the end of the week, tensions reached a boiling point. A prominent senator demanded Laura recuse herself from any involvement in the UR case, citing concerns about impartiality. Others called for an independent inquiry into the matter. Through it all, Laura kept reminding herself of one thing: John's freedom depended on finding the real culprit, and fast. Though exhausted and overwhelmed, Laura refused to give up. She knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but she also knew she couldn't let her brother face this ordeal alone. No matter the cost, she vowed to uncover the truth, even if it meant risking everything she had worked for. And so, the stage was set for a battle, unlike any Laura had faced before. With her career hanging in the balance and her family's reputation on the line, she prepared to fight tooth and nail for justice, not just for John, but for everyone who deserved the truth. Agent Ryan Cole sat at his desk late into the night, poring over the details of John Miller's case. The room was quiet, except for the hum of his computer and the occasional rustle of papers as he flipped through files. Laura Carter had entrusted him with a task that could make or break her brother's future, and possibly her own career. Ryan knew the stakes were high, but he also felt a deep sense of responsibility. If there was even a sliver of truth to John's claim of innocence, it was up to Ryan to find it. The first thing Ryan did was revisit the timeline of events leading up to John's arrest. He cross-referenced security footage from the military base with statements provided by witnesses. Something didn't add up. According to the prosecution, John had entered the restricted area, stolen the flash drive, and left unnoticed. But Ryan noticed inconsistencies. For instance, the flash drive containing the classified documents had been accessed online hours after John supposedly departed the building. How could John have been responsible if he wasn't near the device when it was used? Ryan decided to focus on the man seen lurking near the restricted area earlier that day. Witnesses described him as tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a black jacket. This description matched Greg Hoffman, a former contractor who had been fired years ago for embezzlement and other illegal activities. Hoffman had since fallen off the radar, but rumors suggested he still dabbled in shady deals. Could he be involved in framing John? Ryan made a mental note to investigate further. To gather more information, Ryan reached out to some of his contacts within law enforcement. One of them, Detective Sarah Myers, agreed to meet him at a small diner outside town. Over coffee, Sarah shared what she knew about Hoffman. "He's bad news," she said, stirring sugar into her cup. "Word is, he's been working with some dangerous people lately. guys tied to organized crime. If they needed someone to take the fall for something big, Hoffman would be their guy. Ryan thanked Sarah for the tip and promised to keep her updated. As he drove back to headquarters, his mind raced with possibilities. What if Hoffman had planted the flash drive in John's bag deliberately? It would explain why John's fingerprints were on the device. Maybe Hoffman had orchestrated the entire scheme to cover his own tracks, or worse, to frame John as part of a larger conspiracy. The next morning, Ryan paid a visit to the military base where the theft occurred. He wanted to see the scene for himself and talk to anyone who might have noticed something unusual. The base commander, Colonel Robert Hayes, greeted him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "I assume you're here because of the recent incident?" Hayes asked, his tone guarded. "Yes, sir," Ryan replied. "I'm trying to piece together what happened. Any detail, no matter how small, could help." Hayes nodded reluctantly and led Ryan to the restricted area. As they walked, Ryan asked about the security measures in place. Hayes explained that only authorized personnel were allowed access, and all visitors required clearance. Yet somehow, an outsider like John had managed to enter undetected. Ryan pressed for more details, particularly about the staff on duty that day. One name caught his attention: Kyle Bennett, a junior technician who had been working near the restricted area. When Ryan tracked down Kyle, the young man seemed nervous but cooperative. "I remember seeing someone hanging around before the alarm went off," Kyle admitted. "At first, I thought it was just another employee, but now I'm not so sure." "Can you describe this person?" Ryan asked. Kyle hesitated, then nodded. "He was tall, maybe 6 feet, and wearing a dark jacket. I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, it seems strange." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. This matched the description of Greg Hoffman. He thanked Kyle and left the base, more convinced than ever that Hoffman was involved. But proving it wouldn't be easy. Every lead Ryan pursued seemed to hit a dead end. Files disappeared, witnesses changed their stories, and doors slammed shut before he could step through them. Someone clearly didn't want him digging too deeply. Back at FBI headquarters, Ryan briefed Laura on his findings. She listened intently, her expression a mixture of hope and frustration. "It sounds like we're on to something," she said, finally. "But we need concrete evidence. Without it, we're just spinning our wheels." Ryan agreed. He suggested using facial recognition software to confirm whether the man in the security footage was indeed Greg Hoffman. However, accessing the necessary tools required approval from higher-ups, approval that might not come easily given the sensitive nature of the case. Laura assured Ryan she would handle it discreetly, pulling strings behind the scenes to ensure he got what he needed. While Ryan continued his investigation, Laura faced mounting pressure from all sides. Members of Congress demanded answers, accusing her of bias and calling for her resignation. Journalists hounded her at every turn, speculating about her role in the case. Even within the FBI, whispers of discontent began to surface. Some agents questioned her leadership, while others expressed concern that her involvement could tarnish the agency's reputation. Despite the chaos, Laura remained determined. She spent long hours reviewing case files, searching for anything Ryan might have missed. Her nights were sleepless, filled with worry about John and the growing storm surrounding her. Still, she refused to give up. Every setback only strengthened her resolve to uncover the truth. One evening, as Ryan worked late in his office, he received an unexpected phone call. It was Detective Sarah Myers again. "I found something you need to see," she said urgently. "Meet me at my precinct ASAP." Ryan grabbed his coat and headed out immediately. When he arrived, Sarah handed him a folder containing surveillance photos taken near the military base. In one image, a man resembling Greg Hoffman could be seen talking to someone in a car. Though the driver's face was obscured, Ryan recognized the vehicle. It belonged to Deputy Director Paul Simmons, Laura's second-in-command. Ryan's blood ran cold. Was Simmons involved in the conspiracy? If so, it meant the corruption went deeper than he had imagined. He thanked Sarah and rushed back to headquarters, where he shared the discovery with Laura. She stared at the photo, her hands trembling slightly. "This changes everything," she whispered. Laura knew she couldn't confront Simmons directly. Not yet. Doing so could tip him off and jeopardize the investigation. Instead, she instructed Ryan to dig deeper into Simmons' background, looking for any connections to Hoffman or the individuals implicated in the conspiracy. At the same time, she began documenting every interaction she had with Simmons, hoping to catch him in a lie. As days turned into weeks, the tension grew unbearable. Ryan worked tirelessly, following leads and piecing together fragments of the puzzle. Laura navigated the political minefield, deflecting criticism and shielding Ryan's efforts from prying eyes. And John, locked away in a jail cell, clung to the hope that his sister and the agent assigned to his case would clear his name. Though progress was slow, Ryan eventually uncovered a crucial piece of evidence: a surveillance video showing Hoffman planting the flash drive in John's bag moments before leaving the scene. The video was heavily encrypted, requiring specialized software to decrypt. With Laura's help, Ryan secured access to the tools he needed, but time was running out. John's trial was fast approaching, and without solid proof of his innocence, the outcome looked grim. Through it all, Laura held on to one unwavering belief: justice would prevail. No matter how daunting the obstacles or how powerful the enemies arrayed against her, she vowed to fight for the truth. For John, for herself, and for everyone who deserved accountability, she refused to back down. And so, the battle raged on. Each new revelation brought them closer to unraveling the conspiracy, but also closer to confronting those who would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. The encrypted surveillance video sat on Agent Ryan Cole's desk like a ticking time bomb. It was the key to proving John Miller's innocence, but unlocking its secrets felt nearly impossible. Ryan had spent days trying to decrypt it, his frustration mounting with each failed attempt. The software he needed was highly specialized and rarely approved for use outside top-secret investigations. But without it, the truth would stay buried, and John might end up paying the ultimate price. Laura. Carter knew how critical this evidence was. She couldn't sit idly by while her brother's fate hung in the balance. After another restless night, she made a decision that terrified her. She decided to take a risk, a big one. Quietly, she reached out to an old friend, Emily Dawson, a journalist known for exposing corruption in government agencies. Laura trusted Emily's integrity and believed she could help shine a light on the conspiracy threatening to destroy John's life. Meeting Emily at a secluded park bench, Laura handed over classified documents detailing everything Ryan had uncovered so far. "This isn't just about my brother," Laura said firmly. "It's about holding powerful people accountable. If I can't do it from within the system, then maybe the public can force their hand." Emily nodded, understanding the gravity of what Laura was asking. "You realize this could end your career," she said quietly. "I know," Laura replied. "But if it saves John, I'll do whatever it takes." Over the next few days, Emily worked tirelessly to verify the information Laura had given her. She interviewed sources, cross-checked facts, and pieced together a narrative that painted a damning picture of corruption within the military and law enforcement. When her articles hit the front pages, they sent shockwaves across the nation. Headlines screamed about a cover-up involving high-ranking officials, and public outrage grew louder with each passing day. For Laura, the fallout was immediate and brutal. Members of Congress called for her resignation, accusing her of leaking classified material to protect her family. Critics labeled her actions as reckless and self-serving. Even some of her colleagues at the FBI began to distance themselves, fearing association with her would tarnish their own reputations. Despite the backlash, the tide started to turn slightly in John's favor. Public opinion shifted as more details emerged and calls for a fair trial gained momentum. Yet Laura knew the battle was far from over. While the media frenzy created pressure, it also put a target on her back. Powerful forces were now watching her every move, waiting for any misstep that could be used against her. Meanwhile, Ryan faced dangers of his own. One evening, as he left his apartment building, he noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Its engine idled softly and the windows were tinted too dark to see inside. Something about it felt wrong. As Ryan walked briskly toward his car, the sedan suddenly revved its engine and sped toward him. Heart-pounding, Ryan dove behind a nearby dumpster just as the vehicle screeched past, narrowly missing him. Shaken but alive, Ryan realized someone didn't want him digging deeper into the case. Whoever was behind the conspiracy wasn't going to let him expose the truth without a fight. He called Laura immediately to report the incident. "They're getting desperate," he told her. "We're close, I can feel it." Laura agreed. With time running out before John's trial, she doubled down on her efforts to support Ryan's investigation. She authorized additional resources, under the radar, ensuring Ryan had everything he needed to decrypt the video. Late one night, after hours of painstaking work, Ryan finally succeeded. The footage showed Greg Hoffman sneaking into the restricted area, planting the flash drive in John's bag and slipping away unnoticed. It was irrefutable proof of John's innocence. But before they could celebrate, disaster struck again. Deputy Director Paul Simmons, whose name had surfaced earlier in connection with Hoffman, vanished without a trace. Files related to the case disappeared from secure servers, and rumors spread that Simmons had fled the country. Laura confronted the remaining leadership team at the FBI, demanding answers. Her tone was sharp, her patience worn thin. "This is bigger than any of us," she declared. "If we don't act now, justice will never be served, not for my brother, not for anyone caught in this web of lies." Her words resonated with some agents who rallied behind her despite the risks. Together, they launched an internal investigation targeting Simmons and anyone else implicated in the conspiracy. Leads poured in, connecting Simmons to Hoffman and several corrupt military officials. Phone records revealed secret meetings, financial transactions hinted at bribes, and emails exposed plans to frame John as a scapegoat. As the pieces fell into place, Laura prepared for the final showdown. She called an emergency meeting with Attorney General Karen Hayes, presenting all the evidence Ryan had uncovered. The room was tense as Laura laid out the facts. John's fingerprints were planted, the timeline didn't match, and the real culprit, Greg Hoffman, had been captured on video committing the crime. Hayes listened carefully, her expression unreadable. When Laura finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Hayes spoke. "This is explosive," she admitted. "If we dismiss the charges against your brother, it will look like favoritism unless you step down." Laura froze. She had known this moment might come, but hearing it aloud still hit hard. Stepping down meant giving up everything she had worked for: the respect, the authority, the chance to make a difference. But staying in power meant sacrificing John, and that was unthinkable. "I'll resign," Laura said quietly but firmly. "But only if you promise to clear my brother's name." Hayes hesitated, then nodded. Agreed. With the agreement in place, Laura prepared for the inevitable storm. She held a press conference addressing the nation with calm determination. Standing behind a podium, she admitted to leaking classified information, explaining her reasons for doing so. She presented the surveillance video and other evidence proving John's innocence, naming names and exposing the corruption within the military and law enforcement. The reaction was swift and overwhelming. Some praised Laura for her courage, calling her a hero. Others condemned her actions, labeling her a traitor. But one thing was undeniable. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. Behind the scenes, Ryan tracked down Simmons to a remote, safe house. After a tense confrontation, Simmons confessed to being blackmailed into cooperating with Hoffman and his accomplices. Fearing for his family's safety, he had gone along with their scheme, providing insider information to ensure John took the fall. Though disgusted by Simmons's betrayal, Ryan recognized the value of his testimony. With Simmons' cooperation, authorities arrested Hoffman and several high-ranking officials tied to the conspiracy. As the dust settled, John was released from custody, vindicated by the overwhelming evidence proving his innocence. Though grateful to be free, he struggled to process everything that had happened. The experience had left scars, both visible and invisible, that would take time to heal. Laura, now a private citizen, found solace in spending time with her brother. They visited a quiet countryside home where they could escape the chaos and reflect on what they had endured. Sitting together on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, Laura felt a ultimately resilient spirit prevail. Despite the cost, they had stood together when it mattered most. And sometimes, that was enough. The days following Laura Carter's resignation were a blur of chaos and uncertainty. The media frenzy reached fever pitch as reporters scrambled to dissect every detail of the scandal. Headlines screamed about corruption, betrayal, and justice, served or denied. For Laura, stepping down from her role as FBI director was both a relief and a burden. On one hand, she no longer had to shoulder the immense weight of leadership or navigate the treacherous waters of politics. On the other hand, she felt stripped of her purpose, unsure of what came next. John Miller, now free from jail, tried to adjust to life outside prison walls, but freedom didn't feel as sweet as he had imagined. He struggled with sleepless nights haunted by memories of his time in custody. The stares of strangers on the street reminded him that he would always be known as the man who almost went to prison for treason. Despite being cleared of all charges, the stigma lingered, casting a shadow over his attempts to rebuild his life. Laura spent most of her time helping John settle into a small countryside home she rented for them. Away from the noise of the city, they hoped to find peace and healing. Yet even in this quiet retreat, tension simmered beneath the surface. John barely spoke, retreating into himself whenever Laura tried to talk about the future. She understood his pain but worried that his silence might deepen into something darker if left unchecked. Meanwhile, Agent Ryan Cole continued working tirelessly to ensure the conspiracy was fully exposed. With Greg Hoffman and several corrupt officials behind bars, the investigation shifted focus to those who had enabled their crimes. Deputy Director Paul Simmons, though cooperative after his arrest, remained a complicated figure. His testimony revealed how deeply entrenched the corruption was within certain branches of the military and law enforcement. Ryan sat in an interrogation room late one evening, reviewing Simmons's latest statement. According to Simmons, the conspiracy wasn't just about stealing classified documents. It was part of a larger scheme to manipulate government contracts and funnel money into private accounts. John had been chosen as a scapegoat because he fit the profile of someone easy to frame, a regular citizen with no connections to power or wealth. It was a chilling reminder of how vulnerable ordinary people could be when faced with such overwhelming forces. As Ryan pored over the evidence, he couldn't shake the feeling that there were still loose ends. Someone at the top must have orchestrated the entire operation, pulling strings from behind the scenes. But identifying that person proved difficult. Every lead seemed to vanish into thin air, blocked by layers of secrecy and fear. Ryan knew he was running out of time. Public interest in the case was waning, and without concrete results, the remaining culprits might slip away forever. Back at the countryside home, Laura and John began taking small steps toward rebuilding their lives. Laura encouraged John to reconnect with old hobbies like fixing up old cars, a passion he had neglected during his legal troubles. At first, John resisted, claiming he wasn't ready. But slowly, he started tinkering with an abandoned truck parked in the driveway. The rhythmic clang of tools against metal became a form of therapy, allowing him to channel his frustration into something productive. One afternoon, as John worked under the hood of the truck, Laura approached him cautiously. "How are you holding up?" she asked gently. John paused, wiping grease-stained hands on a rag. "I don't know," he admitted. "Some days I feel okay. Other days, it's hard not to think about everything that happened." "I get it," Laura said softly. "It's going to take time. But we'll get through this, together." Her words brought a faint smile to John's face, though sadness still lingered in his eyes. They sat together in silence for a while, watching the sun dip below the horizon. In moments like these, Laura allowed herself to hope that things might eventually return to normal, or at least some version of it. Elsewhere, Emily Dawson published another article exposing additional details of the conspiracy. Her reporting uncovered links between the arrested officials and powerful corporate interests, sparking outrage among readers. Calls for accountability grew louder, prompting Congress to launch its own inquiry into the matter. Lawmakers grilled witnesses, demanded answers, and vowed to implement reforms to prevent similar abuses of power in the future. Despite the progress, Laura couldn't help but feel uneasy. The system she had once believed in so strongly now seemed fragile, riddled with cracks that allowed corruption to fester unchecked. She wondered whether true change was possible, or if the same patterns would repeat themselves once the spotlight faded. Ryan, too, grappled with these questions as he wrapped up the investigation. Though proud of what he had accomplished, he knew the fight wasn't over. Corrupt individuals might have been caught this time, but others would inevitably rise to take their place unless systemic issues were addressed. Determined to make a difference, Ryan proposed forming a new anti-corruption unit within the FBI. Its mission would be to root out misconduct before it spiraled out of control, protecting innocent people like John from becoming pawns in dangerous games. To his surprise, the proposal gained traction. Even amidst the turmoil surrounding Laura's resignation, there was widespread agreement that something needed to change. Ryan was appointed to lead the unit, tasked with implementing reforms and training agents to recognize red flags early. It was a daunting responsibility, but one he embraced wholeheartedly. As weeks turned into months, life began to stabilize, for Laura, John, and Ryan alike. Laura found solace in volunteering at local community organizations, using her expertise to mentor young professionals interested in law enforcement. John, inspired by his sister's resilience, decided to pursue a career teaching auto mechanics, sharing his skills with others who shared his passion. And Ryan threw himself into his new role, determined to leave a lasting impact on the agency he loved. Yet, even as they moved forward, none of them forgot the lessons learned during those tumultuous months. They had seen firsthand how easily truth could be twisted, how quickly trust could erode, and how vital it was to stand up for what was right, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. One evening, as Laura and John sat together on the porch, the air cool and crisp, Laura reflected on everything they had endured. "We've been through hell," she said quietly, "but we came out stronger on the other side." John nodded, a genuine smile breaking through for the first time in months. "Yeah," he replied, "and we did it together." In that moment, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the countryside, they found comfort in knowing that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. Justice had prevailed, not perfectly, not without scars, but enough to remind them that fighting for the truth was always worth it. Months had passed since the conspiracy was exposed, and life began to settle into a fragile kind of normalcy for Laura Carter and her brother John Miller. The countryside home they shared became a sanctuary, shielding them from the relentless scrutiny that had followed them for so long. Yet even in this peaceful retreat, reminders of the past lingered. Every news report about the scandal, every interview dissecting the fallout felt like reopening an old wound. For Laura, stepping away from the FBI left a void she hadn't anticipated. She missed the sense of purpose her work had given her, the belief that she was making a difference. But she also knew she couldn't go back, not after everything that had happened. Instead, she focused on helping John rebuild his life and finding ways to contribute outside the confines of government. Bureaucracy. Volunteering at community organizations gave her a renewed sense of purpose, though it wasn't quite the same as leading an agency tasked with protecting the nation. John, too, struggled to adjust. While he was grateful for his freedom, the scars of his ordeal ran deep. He often woke up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, haunted by memories of his time in jail. During the day, he tried to distract himself by working on cars or planning lessons for his new teaching job. But sometimes, the weight of it all became too much, and he would retreat into silence, shutting out even Laura. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Laura decided to broach the subject. "You've been quieter than usual lately," she said gently. "Is something bothering you?" John hesitated before answering. It's just, I keep thinking about how close I came to losing everything. Sometimes I wonder if people will ever really believe I didn't do it. Laura reached over and placed a hand on his shoulder. I know it's hard, but you can't let what other people think define you. What matters is that we know the truth, and we fought for it. Her words offered some comfort, but John still felt uneasy. He worried that no matter how much time passed, the label of traitor would cling to him like a shadow. It was a fear Laura understood all too well. She had faced similar judgment during her resignation. Together, they vowed to keep moving forward, one step at a time. Meanwhile, Agent Ryan Cole threw himself into his new role as head of the FBI's anti-corruption unit. The position came with immense responsibility, but Ryan embraced it with determination. He assembled a team of dedicated agents, each chosen for their integrity and commitment to justice. Their mission was clear: to root out corruption before it could take hold, ensuring that cases like John's never happened again. Ryan's first task was to overhaul internal protocols, implementing stricter oversight measures and creating channels for whistleblowers to report misconduct safely. He also worked closely with lawmakers to draft legislation aimed at increasing transparency within government agencies. Though progress was slow, Ryan remained hopeful. For every roadblock they encountered, there were small victories: cases uncovered, reforms enacted, lives protected. Despite his dedication, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. The conspiracy involving Greg Hoffman and Paul Simmons had been dismantled, but Ryan suspected there were others operating in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. He made it his personal mission to stay vigilant, knowing that complacency was the enemy of justice. Back in Washington, D.C., the political fallout from the scandal continued to reverberate. Members of Congress held hearings to address the systemic issues exposed by the case. Witnesses testified about the culture of secrecy and intimidation that allowed corruption to flourish unchecked. Public outrage fueled calls for accountability, and several high-ranking officials resigned under pressure. Among those affected was Attorney General Karen Hayes, who faced mounting criticism for her initial reluctance to intervene in John's case. Though she ultimately played a key role in clearing his name, many questioned whether she had done enough to prevent the conspiracy in the first place. In response, Hayes announced sweeping reforms within the Department of Justice, pledging to restore public trust. As the dust settled, attention turned to the legacy of Laura Carter. Some viewed her resignation as noble, a selfless act to protect her brother and expose the truth. Others saw it as reckless, arguing that her actions undermined the very institution she had sworn to uphold. Regardless of opinion, there was no denying the impact she had made. Her courage inspired countless individuals to speak out against injustice, sparking a nationwide conversation about accountability and transparency. Laura herself avoided the spotlight, preferring to focus on quieter acts of service. She mentored young professionals pursuing careers in law enforcement, sharing her experiences and encouraging them to remain steadfast in the face of adversity. Her story served as both a cautionary tale and a source of inspiration, reminding others that doing the right thing often came at great personal cost. For John, healing came slowly but steadily. Teaching auto mechanics proved therapeutic, giving him a chance to connect with students eager to learn. Many admired his resilience, seeing him not as a victim but as someone who had overcome incredible odds. Over time, John began to reclaim pieces of himself, rediscovering joy in the simple pleasures of life. Still, neither Laura nor John could fully escape the specter of the past. Late one night, as they sat together in the living room, a knock at the door startled them. Opening it cautiously, Laura found a man standing on the porch, his face partially obscured by shadows. "Can I help you?" she asked warily. The man stepped into the light, revealing himself to be none other than Paul Simmons. Released on bail pending trial, Simmons looked haggard, his once authoritative demeanor replaced by desperation. "I need to talk to you," he said urgently. "There's something you need to know." Laura hesitated, unsure whether to trust him. But curiosity and concern for John won out. She invited Simmons inside, where he revealed startling information. Higher-ups within the military were planning to retaliate against anyone involved in exposing the conspiracy. According to Simmons, operatives had been dispatched to intimidate key figures, including Laura and Ryan. The revelation sent chills down Laura's spine. She thanked Simmons for the warning, though she doubted his motives were entirely altruistic. Once he left, she immediately called Ryan to share the news. "We need to be careful," she told him. "This isn't over yet." Ryan agreed, urging Laura and John to stay vigilant. He increased security around his own team and reached out to trusted contacts within law enforcement to monitor any suspicious activity. Though the threat loomed large, they refused to let fear dictate their actions. If anything, it only strengthened their resolve to continue fighting for justice. In the weeks that followed, Laura and John took precautions, installing cameras around their property and varying their routines to avoid predictability. Despite the added stress, they found solace in each other's company. Together, they reminded themselves why they had endured so much, to ensure that no one else suffered because of corruption. As winter approached, bringing with it colder nights and shorter days, Laura reflected on how far they had come. The journey had been fraught with pain and sacrifice, but it had also brought moments of triumph and connection. She realized that while the scars might never fully fade, they were a testament to their strength, a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope could prevail. One evening, as snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, Laura and John stood side by side on the porch, watching the world transform into a glittering white canvas. "Do you think things will ever truly feel normal again?" John asked quietly. Laura smiled, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "Maybe not completely, but I think we'll find our own version of normal, one that includes peace, purpose, and the knowledge that we did the right thing." John nodded, a sense of calm washing over him. For the first time in months, he felt hopeful, not because everything was perfect, but because they had each other. And sometimes that was enough. Winter deepened, blanketing the countryside home Laura Carter and her brother John Miller shared with a thick layer of snow. The world outside seemed hushed, as if nature itself had paused to reflect. Inside, however, life continued its steady rhythm. Laura and John had grown accustomed to their quieter existence, finding comfort in routines that grounded them after months of chaos. Laura spent her mornings reading newspapers and journals, keeping tabs on developments related to the conspiracy. Though she no longer held a position of power, she remained deeply invested in ensuring accountability. Her volunteer work at local community organizations gave her a renewed sense of purpose, allowing her to mentor young professionals eager to make a difference. She often shared stories about her experiences, both the triumphs and the failures, hoping to inspire others to stand firm against injustice. John, too, found solace in his teaching job. His students admired him for his skill and patience, unaware of the battles he had fought to reach this point. Teaching became more than just a career. It was therapy, a way to rebuild his confidence and rediscover joy in sharing knowledge. On weekends, he worked on restoring old cars, transforming rusted wrecks into gleaming machines. Each completed project felt like reclaiming a piece of himself. Despite these positive changes, neither Laura nor John could fully escape the lingering effects of their ordeal. Nightmares still visited John occasionally, and Laura sometimes woke up feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on her chest. But they learned to lean on each other during difficult moments, drawing strength from their bond. One afternoon, as Laura flipped through a stack of letters from people inspired by her actions, she came across one that stood out. It was from Agent Ryan Cole, now leading the FBI's anti-corruption unit. In it, he thanked her for trusting him to investigate John's case and updated her on recent successes. Several high-ranking officials implicated in the conspiracy had been convicted, and new safeguards were being implemented to prevent similar abuses of power. Ryan also mentioned that threats against key figures involved in exposing the conspiracy had subsided. Investigations suggested that operatives sent to intimidate witnesses had been recalled, likely due to increased scrutiny following public outrage. While vigilance was still necessary, Ryan assured Laura and John that they were safer now than before. The letter brought Laura a sense of closure she hadn't realized she needed. She tucked it away carefully, deciding to frame it later as a reminder of how far they had come. That evening, she shared the news with John over dinner. "It looks like things are finally calming down," she said, smiling faintly. John nodded, relief washing over him. "Does that mean we can stop looking over our shoulders?" "Not completely," Laura admitted. "But it means we can start focusing on the future instead of worrying about the past." Encouraged by Ryan's update, Laura decided to take a small trip into town the next day. She wanted to pick up supplies for baking cookies, a tradition she hoped would bring warmth to their home during the cold season. As she walked through the quiet streets lined with snow-dusted trees, she noticed something unexpected. Neighbors waved and greeted her warmly. Some even stopped to thank her for her bravery. At first, Laura felt awkward, unsure how to respond. She had always seen herself as someone simply doing her duty, not a hero worthy of praise. But as more people approached her, expressing gratitude for standing up to corruption, she began to see the impact of her actions in a new light. Maybe she hadn't saved the entire system, but she had inspired individuals to believe change was possible. When she returned home, arms laden with groceries, John greeted her with raised eyebrows. "You look like you've been busy," he teased. "I ran into some friendly faces," Laura replied, setting the bags down. "Turns out not everyone thinks I'm a traitor," John chuckled. "Good to hear. Maybe we should bake extra cookies and share them around." They spent the rest of the afternoon laughing and working together in the kitchen, filling the house with the sweet aroma of freshly baked treats. For the first time in months, they felt a genuine sense of peace, not the fragile kind that crumbles under pressure, but the steady kind that comes from knowing you've weathered the storm. Later that week, Ryan paid them a visit. He arrived unannounced, carrying a folder filled with documents detailing the final outcomes of the investigation. Over hot cocoa, he explained that the reforms he had proposed were gaining traction, with support from lawmakers determined to prevent another scandal. "We're building something stronger," he said confidently, "something that will protect people like John from becoming targets." Laura listened intently, pride swelling in her chest. Though she had stepped away from leadership, her influence lived on through those who carried the torch. Ryan's dedication reminded her of why she had joined the FBI in the first place: to serve and protect. Before leaving, Ryan handed Laura a framed certificate commemorating her contributions to justice. "Reform. This is from the team," he said humbly. "We couldn't have done it without you." Tears welled up in Laura's eyes as she accepted the gift. She hadn't expected recognition, but it meant more to her than words could express. For so long she had questioned whether stepping down was the right choice. Now, seeing the tangible results of her sacrifice, she knew it had been worth it. As winter gave way to spring, signs of renewal appeared everywhere. Snow melted, revealing vibrant green grass beneath. Birds chirped cheerfully, and flowers began to bloom. Laura and John embraced the changing season, venturing outside more often to enjoy the fresh air. They planted a small garden together, symbolizing growth and resilience. One sunny morning, as they sat on the porch sipping coffee, John turned to Laura with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if none of this had gone public? If we'd let them win?" Laura considered the question carefully. "I think about it sometimes," she admitted. "But I know one thing for sure. Staying silent wouldn't have fixed anything. It would have eaten away at us, until there was nothing left." John nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Silence might have spared them pain in the short term, but it would have cost them far more in the long run. Their integrity, their values, their humanity. In the end, Laura and John emerged, stronger, not because they had avoided hardship, but because they had faced it head-on. Their journey taught them that justice wasn't just about grand gestures or dramatic victories. It was about standing up for what was right, even when it hurt. It was about protecting the vulnerable, holding the powerful accountable, and refusing to let fear dictate their choices. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting golden light across The countryside, Laura reached over and squeezed John's hand. No matter what happens next, she said softly, we'll keep moving forward, together. John smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he knew they had everything they needed to face it: courage, determination, and each other. And sometimes that was enough.